There we go. We're live. This is how it works. It's that easy. Welcome to the Decision Table, Rassic. Man, what a privilege to meet someone new at the table and just to have some conversation today to get to know you better. And one of the things that I'm doing this month, I began this month because I just felt like, for us to have change, that there needs to be something different happening. And I wasn't consistently having conversations with, new conversations each day. And so this was kind of something that I felt was a good way to do it. And so you're one of these new conversations that we're having today, and looking through the lens of what I really believe we're at this point where there's a need for a new approach to leadership. So who knows where we go today? Who knows? This is just as if you've gone. Okay, so everyone else, I'm here. He's not, but I'm sure he'll be back in a moment. Today's conversation is going to be with Rassic when he comes back. And I've not met him before. So we are going to get to know each other here on this call. And you're going to get to know him just as well as I am. So I'm not sure where he disappeared, but I'm sure he's going to be coming back very quickly. And if not, we'll have a talk. If you are on StreamYard and wanting to comment during this, then make sure you give permission to StreamYard, because sometimes I get people on here having comments and doing comments, and I'm unable to see who it is that's commenting, and it just says Facebook user. And I really want to be able to, like, if you've got a great insight, we want to be able to say, hey, Mary, you had a great insight around da-da-da. I love what you're saying. Oh, you've got a question. And that way it kind of personalizes it much better, right? So, okay, I'm not sure where he's gone right now. Oh, and we've got a flashing light. So if there's a flashing light happening here on the decision table, it's just because we're just too cool today and we need some spotlight on our coolness. Actually, it's because I think there's a fault with the light today. And it began yesterday. So if it's happening too much, I will have to swap that out today. But I just wanted to give it another go, if that's okay. I'm just going to message and see where he is. Oh, I think he's coming back now. So we're good. Let's add him to the stream. There we go. You're back on live with us.
I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened there.
That's all right. You just decided you'd had enough of the decision table and you are out of here already. I have to say that was the first time that's ever happened to me, that someone's left that quickly. So, the pressure's on today.
Yeah. So look, let's try again, and I'll say, look, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, and I'm really excited, honestly, to get to know you better and to have a conversation through this lens of what I call the need for a new approach to leadership. We have been having so many different people on here from different walks of life, and that's kind of, I think the only way we're going to change what is needed out there in this world right now is if we keep looking through different lenses. And I know you come from all I do know about you is that you do come from a different lens that we haven't had on here so far. And I know you're also, through what you're doing at the moment, you're in transition, which will be interesting to sort of dive into that a little bit as well. So
absolutely.
Just think of this as a conversation you're having with a new friend, and we're just letting the world in on it as well. Because I think there's some amazing things when we just create this sort of space where we're having this conversation that we go down deeper, that most people don't have outside in the big wide world. And so part of these conversations is I feel that I am privileged that I get to have conversations with amazing people, amazing humans, and lots of others have missed out on those learnings. And hopefully the listeners that are listening today, or that will be listening on the replay, we'll get a lot of insights from our conversation today. So Yeah,
Sounds
nothing too pressured, really. Now, one thing I do have to ask you, I did hear that you are a fellow Kiwi. Is this true?
Indeed, that is true. So, so I was born and bred in New Zealand, in a place you might know as Taranaki.
Oh, Taranaki. We had someone else on the decision table. Oh, I can't remember what day. It was in the first week, I think it was, Tania Niwa, and she's from Taranaki.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Mm.
So that's where I hail from, a little town called Hawera.
Oh, yes.
And, yeah, if you know it, and so.
Can I just say your headphones are crackling? It might be better without the headphones on.
Okay, let's try. See
Yeah.
if I can change to.
How do? Yeah. Wow.
Is
It's
that
been a
any-
long time. It's been yeah, that's much better because it means that you don't echo. You don't do this crackle.
Perfect?
wa-
All right. So
Was it a while ago that you left that place?
yeah, just a little while ago. So yeah, after doing school and uni and everything over there in New Zealand, I moved to Melbourne, Australia, about 20 years ago. So and I've been here ever since. And have very much enjoyed that. So
Yeah.
probably the other thing to recognise is that, so I say I'm a Kiwi. I also my parents are from an Indian background, so they migrated from India to New Zealand.
Wow.
So I'm kind of a first generation, if you like, born in New Zealand from India. So so there's a bit of a mix of cultural influences. I'll say that.
Yeah.
In me.
There we go. Tanya is actually on here, and she says "Kia ora" from Taranaki.
Kia ora, indeed.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So that's where I've come from. Absolutely. So
and so you said you've got some cultural sort of, obviously some lenses in which you've grown up and around. How do you think that's helped to create who you are today?
Yeah, that's a good question. So so think about so I've grown up in an Indian cultural family, of course, and so naturally that has its influences in terms of the types of, or just the ways that my parents think and their attitudes, and in particular the way that they think about family values and community and all of those kinds of things, and then from a Western cultural environment that I grew up in, and going to kindergarten, school, university, etc., and being part of the New Zealand and now Australian community, that often has been they come from different places and can often be at odds with one another.
Exactly.
So I mean, it's perhaps a simple example to illustrate that's quite poignant. That was quite poignant for me. Is that so my parents, being from an Indian cultural background, had a strong desire and expectation, I would say, for me to marry someone from the same background.
Yes.
And in talking with other people who are also from other ethnic cultures,
yes,
I've seen that as a very common thing. Whereas for me myself, and growing up in a Western cultural environment, there's much more of a openness in terms of, oh, well, you can choose how you want to live and what you want to do, and in that context, who I choose to marry. So I didn't necessarily have that same attitude or thinking as far as who I get together with. So I was personally more open than that. Wasn't discounting, but strangely enough, I did end up marrying someone from the same background as me.
Do you think that was because you were more conditioned in your environment to that was kind of the way, or it was just that was the best one out of course, the best one out of all the options. No, I don't know. Like, how did you actually get to that? Like, isn't it funny that it kind of went to that, even though maybe you were open to beyond that?
Yes, and it's interesting you say that, because my own two older brothers, I'm the youngest of three, they married wives who are not from an Indian background.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
So I had that kind of experience or influence as well. So of course, ultimately, it was the best option.
Of course, yes, absolutely.
and I chose that way.
Yeah.
And it just, I think, for a long time I did struggle a little bit with that that sort of the conflict of beliefs and attitudes and thinking. And it's like, okay, well, especially when I was younger, and school and even university is like, well, okay, so what am I meant to do? How am I meant to choose?
Yes.
And ultimately, it came to myself, looking within myself, and having the willingness to look within myself. Say, okay, what is truly important to me? What are my values? And a strong value from my point of view, having lived multiple different, like different cultural environments.
Yes.
And also have counting amongst my friends, people from many different ethnic backgrounds. Well, a strong value that I hold is to bring together the best of everyone and the best of all different cultures.
Yes.
To the table, because every culture has something to offer.
I so agree with you, and that's one of the reasons that I do these tables, is that I think that we have to have, I don't call it diversity, I say we have to have increase our distinctions at the decision table. And so the reason I say that is because I believe that, firstly, the one thing we have in common that brings this playing field to a common ground is that we are human first. And if we look through the fact that at the decision table, we can be humanity as stakeholders at the table, and then we bring our distinctions to the table. And I want different distinctions at the table because, like you said, there's other perspectives to why you end up making a decision, right? When you've got more data to kind of pull on. That's easy to say, though. Not so easy to do. So you've seen the benefit of being open, right, to having different flavors, different cultural aspects come into your world. This is not always an easy thing at a table, because often there's a few things. There's things like, well, I know my tribe, I know the people I'm used to, and we're heading in the same direction. There's not going to be that pushback that maybe there could be if we bring someone who doesn't know this or know how we think and things like that at the table. And this can create a lot of tension and a lot of, well, let's just not go there. How do we close that gap? How do we make this not just great words and a great way to do a new approach to leadership? Because I believe that this is part of it. How do we actually put this into reality?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying there, or where you're coming from, and I think the in terms of humanity first, I think the first thing is to recognize that, for people to recognize that there is a sameness. There is finding the common ground. And the ultimate common ground is that we are each human. So let's start.
I always go, I think everyone, am I right to say, I don't want to presume anything, is everyone at this table human? And everyone goes, yes. Okay, well, there's a common ground right there.
Exactly. So that's a very good place to start, isn't it? and then from there, it's about then being first of all, I think, being aware that there are different perspectives from different from people who are from different cultural backgrounds, different countries, different walks of life.
Yes.
And that and it comes down to, ultimately, each person has their own perspective based on their own unique experience of life. And from from the point of view of culture and communities of ethnic cultures, they develop they develop community or group values as well, and each, while they might be different, bring different valuable elements to the table. And yes, there will be times when they're at odds with each other.
Yeah.
There are going to be times where people are at odds with each other. It's just natural, because people have different views, attitudes, etc. And the way to bridge that, well, I think it comes down to an individual's willingness to be not only aware of, but to put themselves in the shoes of other people who have different perspectives, and try and as best as they possibly can to view the world from the eyes of other people.
Yeah. So I love that, the perspective, but can I just say something? I used to think I understood, and I'll give you an example. My son, he was born with special needs, and so used a wheelchair and has used a wheelchair for long distance all the time until he now walks short distance quite nicely. But I thought I understood what it was like to be in a wheelchair. And then almost 12 years to the day today, I ended up in a wheelchair and spent a year and a half in a wheelchair. Did you know that I did not understand what it was like to live in a wheelchair until I was in a wheelchair? So how do we have those conversations that I know we need to put ourselves in their footprints, in their footsteps, or in their shoes, and yet there's a side of us that I understand when people push back on that and go, well, you don't actually understand. How do we deal with that, or what are better ways to think about that?
Perhaps it's really about giving them a chance to say it say it for themselves, because the only person that can understand their perspective is them.
So would you say that comes down to listening better?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really is about, so there's a few things there, isn't there? There's first of all being aware of the fact that there is another perspective from other people.
Yeah, beautiful.
Being willing to be willing and open to listening to that, and then actually giving them the space, the free, open-hearted listening to be able to express their truth and express what it is that they're experiencing, what they're feeling, etc. It's only once we allow others that in a safe and open space that they'll actually truly express what's going on for them and what their experience is and what their perspective really is, I believe.
Yeah. So tell me how you've done this. How do you do this?
Yeah, I think it's about living that value of I'm open to connecting with and listening to others, and because I think it's very easy to say, oh yeah, I'm open to what you're wanting to say and your perspective and
Exactly.
It's just one thing to say it, it's another thing to be it. And really, people are going to when they first come into contact with you and connect with you, they're probably going to know within the first 20 to 30 seconds whether you're that kind of person that's actually willing to actually listen to them or not, just from your being and the vibe that they detect from you. And so it's really about embedding and viewing and being truly open, and that's a I think that's an act of respect, and it's an act of, it's an act of love for other people as well, to truly listen to someone else and really is in itself, I believe, an act of love.
Nikhil says my two favorite Kiwis. Kia ora. Very good, Nikhil. I absolutely agree with you on that, of the need to be. And I think that sometimes it's hard to be when there are pressures around us that are not encouraging that to happen, not encouraging you to. So when I say humanity, part of being humanity is those distinctions, and those distinctions are what I actually think are really powerful things that people bring to the table. But our society doesn't always encourage it. Our society doesn't always go, hey, I really love the fact that, and in my case, I thought really differently. I understood things really differently. So I think absolutely out of the box to most people sitting at a table, because that's just where my brain goes. I'm someone who accesses my left and right brain, and because of it, I function in pretty random area I've learned in my life. And this has been a interesting thing. And then I come from, I was born in New Zealand, but I have to tell you, I've lived longer in Australia, and I've traveled the globe and spent so much in the last, before we were hit with this lovely COVID and shut down. I mean, I was living at least 3 years more out across the globe than I was in Australia. And so you get all these different perspectives, you get all these different insights. And it's not always understood at a table, and it's not always accepted, because it might be within the culture that you've grown up in or that you've been exposed to, but as a general culture. And so being is not always easy when there's pushback to, maybe I'm not sure that I like you being, or I don't know. Any insights around that?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Not everyone's willing to want to be open and connect to that level, are they? So,
Yeah.
So I suppose it's really being able to sort of in connecting and coming into contact with any individual or any group, sort of really meeting them where they're at, and be like, still be willing, and in my being, what I'll do is I'll still be as open as I can be, to what it is they're saying, where they're coming from, and then from that point of view, I mean, there are going to be people who are quite rigid in a particular belief or view. I mean, when I was dealing with my parents, it was like, well, you must marry someone who's from an Indian background. Okay, it was like, okay, well, it's not really possible to sort of be, to open that any further or negotiate with that. So it's about meeting them where they're at. It's like, well, okay, so I get what you're saying, and I understand what. I understand why you say that way, and this is what I believe. And sometimes we just have to agree to disagree, and it's about then being respectful. After that, so it's possible, and sometimes necessary to have different perspectives around a table and different views around a table. It's just, well, if as long as there's respect, there's the possibility of somehow coming together and working together with even though there might be different disagreeing or diametrically opposed views, at least it's possible to have a conversation and have a debate. Without that, there's not even the possibility of being able to listen to someone else's point of view, let alone take it into account.
Yeah. So think about that in the business world, though, and bringing those conversations, the sort of a safe space in which we can debate more and look at different perspectives, so that we can be more comfortable. I always say more comfortable with the uncomfortable conversations, right? I think there's a real need for that, so that we can get exactly what you say around creating awareness, because that's where it starts. And unless we give the platform, the space for others to be able to be heard, have a voice, then there is no, like, we're only ever going to go from what we know and our own perspective. That is easy to say in lots of ways with words again, but not so easy to do when you're, you know, an example, I was on this live yesterday. I wasn't on the panel. I was just listening to the panel, and it was a lot of people speaking about what had happened in Washington, D.C. And it was, I thought, quite a variety of different distinctions at the table. Yet there was a person who was commenting in the comments and just going off saying everyone's just agreeing on this. And I'm like, until we can have open forums where we're not having these, or are we always going to have these open forums that there's people abusing us left, right, and center? How do we do that better? How can we do that better? Have you got any thoughts around that? Because I was left going, you know, even, and here's the other piece, that even those that were speaking, that, and there was literally someone who identified as white, and then there were and they were identifying as African American on the panel. And they were, so she said something, and they said, well, that's because it comes from that privilege that we speak of in this way. And so it kind of, and then people were apologizing for saying things. Yet I was like, it would be a really great day. Well, I think it'll be a great day when we can just speak. And it's not that I'm getting at you personally. I just need you to hear what I'm thinking and where I'm coming from. And then we need to what? Hear what you're coming from, and then somehow find something that we can keep shifting the dial forward, and not this, I don't know, it's about you, it's a, you know, attack or abuse, or I don't know. I found that interesting, and it sort of made me go off on this little tangent in my head yesterday around it.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. And no, look, I mean, look, it's I'm not saying it's necessarily an easy thing to navigate or to be able to do by, because I mean, like in any conversation or any interaction with other people, there's always going to be some kind of emotion, or some kind of passions, or driving what they're saying, where they're coming from.
Absolutely.
Strongly in what they're saying, and often the discomfort that you mentioned is about the fear of perhaps offending other people, or putting other people.
Correct.
Like, oh, I don't want to cause upset or anything like that, or so there's that element. There's that element to it at the surface level. It's like, well, maybe I shouldn't say something in case I cause offence. Then
I feel like we're at that stage that people are. There's a willingness to step up, and there's a willingness to want to say things, but they're afraid of that. That if I say something, that it's going to offend someone else. But really, I just want my voice at the table.
Take that a little bit further, then there's fear of what might come back. So there might be a nasty or unwanted or undesirable reaction from someone else coming back. That could be just as equally, if not more extreme.
Yes.
And that would make the person who spoke first feel afraid and taken aback or whatever, and that would be uncomfortable as well. So, you know,
and it did, and you're exactly right, because that's exactly what happened on this call. Like, you could see they were like, I just was sharing my voice of what was going on and how I see it, and then they kind of had to justify why they said that. And that's the piece that I really grit at the moment, because it's like every time I say something, now I've got to justify why I'm saying that, or that I have to back that up. I'm not saying everyone needs to say everything all the time. I get that there's this respect, this place where we have to be willing to really, you know, be careful of what we say, because we don't want to offend in that way. There is that piece of that respect that you spoke of, you know, kind of bridging that gap between your parents and their thinking, and then the thinking that you're now gathering as you're going through your journey and how to bridge that, right? So there's that respect. I'm not saying go against that at all, just for anyone that's listening. But what I think there is the fact that if we do say something different and you don't agree with it, even though it's my beliefs, it's about my values in my life. And I think it's important that you hear where I'm coming from with this, because this is why I'm making decisions the way I am going forward. And I'd love to see how we can make it so that it's not just about me, but it's about, well, what do you need at the table? And what does Mary down the road need, or George down the road, or whatever it is, right? And I think it's that piece that, I'm finding really interesting at the moment, because there's this need for the awareness. People are touching on some pieces like these conversations that we are creating an awareness, but then, how do we deal? Like, have you got strategies or some strategies that you've used to help people in your sphere of influence, your area, that has helped people get through this?
Yeah, I suppose so. There's the personal realm that I mentioned in terms of how if I just use that situation with my parents and
Yes.
And it's really about in terms of that. Well, okay, so even to this day, so they still maintain that view. Okay, and I maintain mine, and so I suppose, and to start with, it was very uncomfortable. Let me tell you, to the where I was afraid. I didn't even really want to raise the subject.
Yes.
Ultimately, what happened over time is that I learned to understand that that fear is just a natural part of being human. I mean, it is there for a purpose to make sure that we're not that we are detecting any potential real threats to our safety and that kind of thing. And so what I realized is going into a conversation like that, I'm not I would then ask myself, okay, am I in any real danger in having this conversation? Is there a real and present danger? Now, I'm not about to be attacked physically or anything like that. So that was okay. So okay, well then if I can change my attitude to that discomfort, that fear, and say, okay, that's just a natural part of being human. It's just what I'm experiencing right now, and it's okay. It's not necessarily, I don't have to see it as a bad thing. So changing my attitude towards that discomfort, towards that fear, and saying it's okay. I can be there with that fear and continue the conversation.
Yeah.
And so eventually that does come with time and practice, I think. It's not something that I can sort of flick the switch and all of a sudden it is something that comes with time and practice. And so ultimately I was able to speak my truth to my parents, say, well, this is what I believe in, and this is how I'm going to choose. I'm not necessarily going to choose someone who's from an Indian background, and I strongly believe the value of all humans together equally. And I want to marry someone who I truly love and who I truly connect with and who I want to be with for the rest of my life.
Wow, powerful.
And so translate to other realms, business, corporate, whatever.
Yes.
So I've spent many years in the IT industry. And and part of leading initiatives for changing the way people work, particularly as technology changes. Of course, technology introduces new ways of doing things, and then there are people who have been working in an organisation for 30 years, and they're like, oh, well, I like the way that it was. Why are we changing?
Exactly.
When it comes to that, again, it's like, okay, well, what is there? I mean, they're coming from a place of fear because think about someone who's worked in a place that long, and the things are changing that much faster than when they were first starting their careers. Naturally, they're scared, afraid. So it's about, rather than trying to force a change on them, it's like, well, okay, so be able to allow them to have that safe way of expressing, okay, so what is it that you're worried about? And they'll say, well, I don't know if I can learn this new way, and I don't know if I can pick up on this new technology. It's just so complicated, and I don't really know how to use it. Well, okay, well, understand. Don't worry. There's going to be the opportunity for you to learn, and that's actually a positive thing for you. And in fact, it's going to make your job easier.
Yeah.
Or I'm just simplifying, but the point is, again, being able to from the point of view of the initiative that is leading the change, as well as from the point of view of those who are being impacted by the change.
Yes.
Being able to have that open conversation, having the awareness that there are other people with different perspectives and different fears and whatever, be able to safely express those.
Yeah.
And again, I've been in projects where, so initially people are like, not only are they uncomfortable about it, they actually actively try and stop the change.
Yes.
I'm like, don't even want to come to the meetings, don't want to be any part of it. And then by the end of it, they're seeing the praises of the project team and saying, oh, what a great thing this is. So it's something that takes time often too.
I agree.
It's not as I said, I didn't say it was easy, and a number of projects do fail in the IT world because of, not because the technology is the easy part. It's
right. In your brain, technology is the easy part. Mine, not so much. But yes, keep going. I'm just stirring because if you know me in my world, technology has been very much a learning in progress.
Put it this way: there are a lot of people that understand the technology.
Yes.
And how it works. The hard part is allowing humans to be able to adapt.
Yes,
to new technology. That's the hard part because of all of the.
Because us as humans, we get stuck in our ways that we know, and I think that's what we're talking about a lot on this conversation. Is that there's so much that we've been conditioned to, we've got biases with, and so even with technology, the same thing. It's like, well, I've been using this piece of technology for so many years. Why would I need to change to this piece? Well, actually, because it might be even more effective and efficient, so you can make a bigger impact. I mean, we're funny as humanity. I think, humans, we really are in that way. And, one of the things that I think is the approach to new leadership is those humans learning how to really exercise what I call the muscle of human intelligence, so that we can, and part of that is, of course, being more willing to change and adapting to that in a much quicker way. And I think that there's so much I could talk about HI. Like, it's what I'm passionate about. It's what I'm building my whole work on. But I really believe that, just like in technology, there are patterns. And so this might have worked in this way, but we upgrade that. And now we've got a better piece of technology that now can make it more efficient. Productivity can go up, add value to whatever it is in someone's life. Same with the muscle of human intelligence, that, although there were things that we're wired to because of maybe our conditioning, maybe the cultures we've been placed in, the biases, the systemic stuff that we've been involved in, that if we look at that and disrupt the patterns that are not adding value to us, that are not increasing our productivity, that are not helping us to be more efficient in what we're doing, that if we find where that new wiring needs to go, we can change behaviors and get different results at the table. And I love the fact that you brought that up, because you can
Yeah,
see
sure.
I'm extremely passionate
Yeah.
about that side of life.
And take that to a different realm, different scale.
Yes.
You're talking about how we looking after the future of our natural environment and on the global scale.
Yes.
And okay, so there's all sorts of conversations about the likes of global warming and the deforestation happening around the world, and the extinction of different species and our biodiversity being threatened, and all of these things.
Yes.
And naturally there's a lot of concern around the world too.
Absolutely.
About that. And so there's an element of, okay, so we've got fields of science around the world explaining what's going on and what could happen if on the current trajectory, and there's all sorts of and so many people have different views and beliefs and attitudes towards that as well. So I suppose what I'm getting at there is that, okay, so there's people there are also on the one hand there are people who like take it to the extreme, don't even believe that it's happening.
Yes, correct.
Or there is that potential threat to our existence in the future, as that people talk about. On the other end, there are those who are leading initiatives to introduce technological advances that will allow changes such as renewable energy, electric cars, and then even taking initiatives to preserve biodiversity by establishing national park reserves and lots of there's look around, there's lots of different initiatives and measures being taken around the world. And so, and then you've got everything and everyone in between those two.
Totally.
And so, on the one hand, you've got those who are, wanting to lead the change.
Yes.
And then on the other end, you've got those who are just like, "What are you talking about? I don't even."
I always talk about it as extremes. We've got extremes. And the problem is that a lot of the division, the challenges, the thinking is actually dividing those extremes, not bringing them together. In other words, bringing division, not inclusion. And my whole thinking is, and I, I love you bring this up, but I think that, part of this approach to leadership is that we need to work out how to work with these extremes more and actually start shifting that closer together. I get to do that because I can play on both sides. There's often tables that I get that are really amazing, closed doors around things with global leaders. And then I'm really comfortable with having a conversation in the dirt in a village, with maybe the kids, with the leaders of the village. And, I've even known to sit and have kava with the chief of the village. I'm really comfortable with that because I know how to communicate to whatever table I'm put at. And that's one of my things that I work with. But I know that's not comfortable for everyone. And I know that's not the normal. And I know that this is something that I'd love to see happening more, and again, it's giving voices to maybe the fact that we need to listen from different aspects, different perspectives, which we've talked a lot about today. And I think that's an interesting concept, and it's not that easy to always have different people at the table. If we even just talk about gender equality at the table, right? Like there's a whole conversation around that. It's really difficult because in the past, we all know, you can see it in research. There's nothing that I'm saying new in this, that it was tending to be white males of a certain age at the table that were given a voice, right? And made decisions that were at the top level that affected us on the front line of humanity, right? And so how do we bring that together more and close the gap? And these are extremes. You talk about the environment. I mean, we've seen so much happening with the environment, and there's such a spectrum on the belief of things like this. So closing that gap from those that don't believe at all that we're doing anything to those that are, oh my goodness, running these initiatives and trying to create such an awareness around it. How do we close that gap to us that are the everyday person? You know, there's so many extremes. The economic, what's happening with the whole, you know, pandemic. We know it's having an effect on the economic sector. And for some, it's being much more like lucrative. And for others, it's dividing the gap from them being able to even provide for their own needs, let alone beyond. How do we close that gap? How do we have that?
And I think, what I'm observing, and this is just my observations really, in terms of how people have responded or reacted to what's been going on. If we talk about the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, yes. So there's a lot of looking to governments and leaders of government. Everyone's tuning into the TV and to see what the daily report is from the government or the leaders or the health officers on the day in terms of what's happening. And there's a lot of commentary about, the government should do this and the government should do that.
Yes.
And then take the example of our home country, and they talk about Team 5 Million.
Yes.
And how people have been aligned together to work together, and and that comes down to, from what I can see, inspiring people down to the individual level.
Yes.
To want to work together on a common goal, and we can talk about we've got this big vacuum in leadership in the world at the moment. No one really has the sort of the admiration, respect that perhaps there might have been once upon a time, and it's hard to the word leader implies that there are people that are going to follow.
Correct.
So really, it's about inspiring people to want to do things for themselves and for the greater good. And I think the example of the Team 5 Million allowed individuals to be able to make those decisions for themselves, for the greater good, and that happened despite the fact that there's 5 million individuals. You can't tell me that there isn't a diversity of views about the pandemic itself, let alone lots of other issues. There was a bringing together of everyone in New Zealand, and the results speak for themselves.
Agree.
So look, it is possible, and I think it's about allowing people to move beyond, because let's face it, it's a scary thing, right? It's allowing people to move beyond or move through the fact that, okay, there's a scary thing out there, but hey, if we band together,
yes,
we can tackle this thing. We can overcome it, and it's really and where I'm coming from, I suppose, with my view or my angle on leadership, is it's about able to help people recognize that there is this scary thing out there. There is fear at an individual level as to what to do next, how to move forward. Not only on this pandemic, a range of issues. The pandemic is just an example, but really to allow individuals to be able to be okay with the fear being there, and be able to act and move and work together and help each other anyway. And from the point of view of the leaders who are inspiring all of that, to really be able to step into who they really are, even though they're afraid of what might happen, even though they have no idea what the consequences ultimately could be for raising their voice and putting forward their views and act and inspiring the action with others. Because I suppose what I see a lot of is there's a fear of what other people might think. I've seen a few times where there've been political leaders, even at a federal level here in Australia. So while they were in government, they were always minding their P's and Q's and not really putting themselves forward. Yet after their career's over, they appear on panel shows and start speaking their mind. And I'm like, well, why weren't you speaking? Why weren't you doing that when you were in government?
Yes.
But because they were afraid of the implications from the point of view of, oh well, maybe they'll be quashed, or they won't be. They'll no longer have the support of the party, or they won't have the support of the public who are voting for them, and so on. And it's like, well, what matters more? So it's the fear, I believe, that's preventing people from really stepping into what they're really about and speaking their mind and wanting to inspire the action that is so desperately needed now. And so what I'm personally really about is helping people be able to navigate that discomfort, that fear, all those emotions, because it's the emotions that often influence and drive behaviour, both in a constructive way and a destructive way.
Yes.
So, let the fear set in and stop and paralyze you. Well, the action and the inspiration just simply won't happen. Conversely, be okay with that fear being there, and rather than seeing it as a bad thing that is uncomfortable, see it as, oh, it's just fear. It's natural. It's fine. I'm okay. I'm forward anyway.
So is this part of the new approach to leadership?
I believe it has to be.
Being able to navigate this?
I believe. I'm not saying it's the only factor, but I see this being able to move forward in the presence of fear as being a key factor in leadership, and being able to inspire and lead by example, such that others will follow.
Yeah, I love that. All right. So if anyone wants to follow you or get to know more about what you do and be able to do this in better ways, how do they get hold of you?
Oh, okay. So the best thing is here just on Facebook, my name Rasik Rama, and also my email address is based on my name, rasik@rasikrama.com. And just reach out, and I'll be happy to have a chat about in particular. If you're someone that's wanting to talk more about, okay, so I'm wanting to be a leader, but not feeling like they have the ability or the nous or the wherewithal to be able to step up to be that leader, then I'm hearing that it's because there's something that's stopping you, and it's probably fear. So I'm here to help you move through that.
Fantastic. A couple of comments in here. Very valuable approach to learn to be okay with fear and leadership and inspire others. Closing the gap is so important and a key to a new approach to leadership. So, I think being able to navigate fear as a leader, because when we bring our perspective, as we've talked about a lot today, there is often a fear that comes with being able to share that, to have a voice in that way. This is one of the very important approaches to being able to kind of close that gap those extremes that we've talked about. We've talked about so many different things. We've talked about, bringing cultural environment factors, thinking at it, and the need for, an increase of those that have differences brought to the table. What is it? I ask this on every single conversation as I'm finishing up. What is it that you're taking from today? We've talked about awareness, and part of awareness and the fundamentals, I believe, to leadership, and part of this new approach is that we have leadership awareness, leadership ownership, and then that brings leadership change. That is got to be leadership with this leadership lens of sustainability. And you were saying that earlier, that it's, this is for the long term, not just the short term. And that's what sustainability is for me. It's leaving those footsteps for not just this generation, but those that are coming and to keep coming, the generations to come. Yeah. What are you going to take from what we've had a conversation on today, and maybe do something with that, take it, learn from it, got an insight, going to do more of?
Yeah, I think especially the part about, we talked about, okay, and we talked a little bit together about the fact that there are extremes, and that's that's the challenge of today, isn't it? How do we address the fact that there are these extremes that seem to be getting even further and further apart in many realms, not in sort of environmental sustainability and politics, and so many different realms, and I think it's being able to you've had the ability to be able to travel around the world and talk to different people and get all those different perspectives. And I think what I'm taking from this is continue to talk to people from different places, different walks of life, different backgrounds, different races, different communities, and I think, regardless of how much or how wide we've cast our net that way, I think I can. What I would personally take from this is and ought to talk to more people from different places to get those different perspectives, because especially from our experiences of last year, and in Melbourne, we were locked down for the best part of the year. It's easy to get wrapped up in the news feed. Yes. And that's not the world perspective. That's not not everyone's perspectives. And we need to go beyond that. And it really that'll allow us to understand what's happening at a more individual level in different places, and then be able to, and then for leaders to be able to understand, okay, so this is what I'm really, this is who is out there. How can we tap into the inspiration, the thing that drives all these people out there? Because I think there's been too much people trying to look to other people for solutions. Yes. What really needs to happen is that we all need to. So yes, leaders need to step up to be able to put forward their message and lead by example for their cause. Also, at the individual level, people need to step up and take the action that they can take. That is never. It's not to just leave up to government leaders or political leaders or business leaders or community leaders. Everyone needs to play their part. Yes. Leaders can't by themselves. As I said earlier, the word leader implies that there are followers. So the followers are part of it as well. And so it's about following with a will of conviction as well, and being able to step into the fear of doing that, of stepping forward as a follower, as well as leaders doing the same. I love that. That was just beautiful the way you finished up on that.
The thing that I'm going, what is it that I'm taking? You brought on it about the extremes. The thing I'm taking from our conversation is this, that I think there's massive extremes, but the concept that you spoke about AI and technology and things like that. And I think there's a massive extreme between AI and what I talked about, which is HI, human intelligence. And I think, how do we narrow that gap so that actually AI and HI can work together to be able to be adding value and, bringing more effectiveness to us as leaders in our sphere of influence, and then giving humanity a voice at the table through the use of both of these tools that I think are just so important. And HI goes back to us as a leader. How are we being as effective as we can with the intelligence that we have within us to be able to use it to make smarter? I go, what if humans were being able to be actually smart humans, that were able to make smart decisions, and imagine then what solutions we could bring to the table.
Absolutely, that combination of head and heart, I guess.
Yes.
That's where it's going to cut. That's what's going to make the difference.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the decision table, for being here and being willing just to have this conversation. I know it's hard because I don't give you questions at the beginning and go, this is what we're going to do. And I know a lot of people do things like that, but I do that on purpose. And I thank you for your willingness, knowing that, technology was kind of your first heart. So probably these kind of conversations on an open forum weren't necessarily something that was hugely in your wheelhouse, but I'm really thankful that you've come and you've spoken so openly about your cultural learnings there, so that we could get a different perspective in the doorway of how you work through that, and then some things that have made that effective, so that when we have those moments where we are bringing what we have as our cultural background into something and then working with someone else around that. I think that was really beautiful, just how you had that vulnerability of bringing that to the table. And I appreciate that. I love the fact, and this is probably the first conversation that we've done that we talk so much about extremes. Firstly, you're talking about family and bringing up and belonging on that side of it. And then we talk about the world stuff, but we intermingled that so much in the conversation. It wasn't just one time, it was sort of in throughout the conversation. And I think that, that's exactly, and it was kind of pivotal for us because we talked about extremes, and that's what we were doing. We were going, hey, by the way, on the global space, but then as an individual, and then back on the global, then back in the individual. And sometimes it is hard for people to talk. I tend to talk with one person on one area. It was beautiful to be able to have a conversation with you today on really being able to mingle that in and out of our conversation. So for me, I really are grateful for our conversation today.
Yeah, likewise. And I think what we do at the individual level projects out to the wider community and global level. So that was perfect. And so I've very much enjoyed our conversation today too. It's given me the opportunity to meet someone else from another perspective too. And
how good, right?
I've loved the opportunity to be able to talk about what I'm feel very strongly about as far as leadership and being able to move forward in the presence of fear to do great things.
Yeah, I love that. All right, I'm just going to close up the broadcast, but stay on for a second after when I end the broadcast. But firstly, before I end it, I know there's been amazing golden nuggets in throughout this conversation. If you've loved this, make sure, thank you, Tanya Niwa. She said, thanks, this was cool. I love to listen to you both. If you've got things from this today, make sure you share. Like we've talked, and we always talk around awareness. I think that's what these conversations are around, is creating an awareness. The biggest way we can create awareness is if you keep sharing this and allowing others, thank you, Kelly, others to, have opportunity to hear these conversations, and then maybe they'll think on that, maybe they'll act on it, maybe it'll bring some change. So get this out, share it out with people you know, and any of the other conversations, and I will be back on this table with another friend tomorrow. So I'm going to end this broadcast now, but you stay on the line, all right? I'm saying that because this is his first time that he's used, what is it called? StreamYard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you. And thank you to those that have listened today. We appreciate you.
Yep. Thanks all.